So we're really very privileged right now to introduce this conversation. Very thankful that we can still deliver this tonight. Unfortunately, obviously, our other building is closed. So the beautiful exhibition, Sophie Gimbel, Fashioning American Couture, isn't open for viewing, but you will be able to see it if you walk by Fifth Avenue and look at our gallery window. You can look in and see it. And I would encourage you, if you are staying, we will be open on Sunday. So if you want to come by and walk through the exhibition, I would really encourage you to do that. It's been about a 3-year project for Beth and I. And we put a proposal together 3 years ago and was accepted by the school. And we have funding and very much support from Saks Fifth Avenue and their visual display team, who worked with Beth to curate the exhibition. So we have the privilege now of having Helen O'Hagan join us for this conversation. Helen is formerly the Vice President of Public Relations and Special Events for Saks Fifth Avenue during Sophie's tenure there at the store. And Beth Charleston-Dincuff is the curator of the Sophie Gimbel exhibition, Fashioning American Couture, and part-time assistant professor of fashion. So please join me in welcoming them both.
Thank you, Fiona. Helen and I could talk forever, so give me a signal when you want us to stop.
Raise your hand.
Yes, jump around. I just want to give you a little background about who Sophie Gimbel is or was, because one of the reasons I did the exhibition is because no one really knows her name anymore, and she was a very important designer for over 40 years. She was the foremost American made-to-measure designer of the 20th century. She was a savvy businesswoman, and she had an innate sense of style. This combination of talents sustained her for over 40 years in her career, from the late 1920s to the late 1960s. She was the head custom designer for the Salon Moderne, which was the exclusive in-house couture department at Saks Fifth Avenue. And one of the reasons, when I first saw Sophie Gimbel's garments, was in the collection at the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I had heard her name a few times previous, when I was a student and earlier on in my career, but I really didn't have a sense of what her designs looked like. Once I put the name together with a little bit of her background and the designs, I just couldn't believe that she wasn't better known. The quality of her garments and the thoughtfulness behind the design are really remarkable. And the more I researched her, the more I realized that there's a whole history, a whole area of American design that really doesn't get enough attention these days, and it's what some people call American couture. We talk about French couture and we talk about American sportswear, but there is this other area that was very prominent, again, in 20th century American fashion before the late 60s, that it gets overlooked today. So that is one of the reasons that I wanted to do the exhibition. And during my research, I met so many wonderful people who were willing to share their stories about Sophie Gimbel. And one of these women was Helen O'Hagan. So Helen, I'd like to start out with asking you how you came to work at Saks Fifth Avenue.
Well, it's sort of a funny story. I came to New York hoping to find a job, and I was spending a weekend with a friend of my family's out in Sands Point, Long Island. And a man that was renting the boathouse happened to work for Look magazine, and he said, "Oh, call me on Monday. Maybe I might know someone." So I called him on Monday, and I was in a phone booth at a hotel about a block from Saks, and he said, "Oh, they're looking for someone to work with this Countess de Mun at Saks Fifth Avenue." Now, Countess de Mun was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and married this French count, lived in Paris, and then came back. And I think maybe what sort of why we hit it off was I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and she loved the fact that I was a Southerner, and I could relate to her. And when I came into Saks for the interview, she didn't want me to see my office space that we were going to have. It was in a little townhouse behind Saks. And they were wonderful. I loved them because it was truly private. I had, anything I needed. I bought a refrigerator because I love Coca-Cola, so I had my 4 o'clock Coca-Cola. And then we have 2 bathrooms, and I mean, what could you ask for? And so it really was quite wonderful. And I joined the company after being interviewed by Countess Dumont. I interviewed on a Wednesday. She said, "When can you begin?" And I was going to visit someone out of New York. So I said Monday, and I came in on Monday, and I spent 38 wonderful years there. And I retired in 1993, and I've kept in touch with many of my designer friends who are still with us, and I've really had fun. That's the only way to describe what I did. It was fun. I mean, I'll never forget, I don't know what possessed me, but I decided I'd love to do, I did a show every year called SFA USA, and it was designers from A to Z. So I decided to go up and do it at Lincoln Center. And I worked with a man who built the tent, and I went up, it was Friday afternoon, I guess, and the show was Monday, and suddenly the man who was doing the lighting decided he was going to hang the lights before the tent was up. Needless to say, the tent collapsed. So here I was with 600 people coming for a dinner and a fashion show. And I have always had wonderful people working with me, and I gave each one of an assignment to look for a local place where we could quickly move. And as it turned out, I was able to move across to Lincoln Center. And although it wasn't the same, I mean, with the runway, everything had to be changed around. The runway changed, everything. But it worked. And so that show was at Lincoln Center. But I did try a tent again. I did it in the Seagram's building. And that was just wonderful. I had the dressing rooms, and I had all the different, buses you can have. One was for makeup, and then 2 were for the models to change. And it worked very well, except the morning of the show, it rained, and I just couldn't believe it. So a lot of rain was settling in, so I went down and got dumpsters from the basement. And I was a do-it-yourself. I pushed the dumpster, poked a hole in the tent, and let the water come into the dumpster, and we were fine. The only problem was all the tablecloths were wet at the bottom. So I called my office, and I said, get every hairdryer that is available and come over here. And I think I had a team of 10 with 10 hairdryers, and we just dried the you couldn't have people in beautiful evening clothes hitting their legs against a wet tablecloth.
Sounds like you had many roles when you were working PR. You took care of everything.
I did it all. I mean, I wasn't a person that, expected everything to be done as this assistant. I mean, I loved doing it, and I loved being a part of it. And it was really a fun time.
What were some of the things you did with Sophie? How did you first meet her, and how did you support her at the Salon Moderne?
I was interviewed in the Salon Moderne, and so that was Sophie's beautiful space where a beautiful blue room that we called Sophie Blue, where
custom color.
Right. A presentation was done every afternoon at 2:30. There were sofas there were chairs, and it was a rectangle. And so I guess somehow, after being interviewed there, we became friends. And I love doing, Sophie did a collection for ready-to-wear. And probably she was the one who did the first lookbooks. Today, all the designers have these books they print and everything. Well, we were the first ones. And what we did was 8 by 10 black and white photos, and then glued them in books and wrote in white ink the description. Well, didn't have very good handwriting, so I found white ribbon and we typed it in. And every store had the book, and they sold from those books if the collection had been there and had left. And that collection was called Sophie Originals. And we took it out. I mean, we did a fashion show every year in Southampton, and it just grew and grew.
Yeah, it took off. You just mentioned that you had to write in white pencil on these lookbooks. What was Sophie's style like? Was she very demanding?
No, she was a wonderful, lovely human being. Just someone, her staff adored her. I mean, you don't see that today. I mean, I see it with some of the designers, but they really loved her. And every Christmas, she gave a party for her workrooms, and she wore a bright red smock. And she had a present for everybody. And then when the twist was in, I did some tapes, and we'd put those on, and she would get out and twist with the head fitter. And, they just loved her, and you couldn't help but love her.
And this is a picture of Sophie up here. This, obviously, the portrait of the woman. This is Sophie, I believe, in the 1940s. So she's relatively young in this image. And the twist came out in the 1960s.
Oh, she was.
She was pretty hip in her later years as well.
Oh, yes. She was very active.
How about her personal style? She believed in keeping fit.
She definitely believed in keeping fit. She went out to Main Chance, where she met her friend Anita May, and they stayed a week or two, and she did that up until maybe a few years before she died. I mean, she did keep fit. Okay. And, she watched what she ate, but she had some of the best desserts I've ever eaten, so she was fortunate that, she didn't have a problem where she would gain a lot of weight, ever.
And I mention that because one of the things that made Sophie Gimbel so successful was, we've all heard that expression, she's her own best model. She had a certain sense of style, as you can see from some of these images, a certain presence, and whatever she would wear out. And I should also mention, and I'm sure Helen will talk about this more, Sophie Gimbel, in the beginning of her career at Saks, married Adam Gimbel, who was the president of Saks at the time. So they had a very active social life. It seems like almost everything they did after hours was geared towards
a black tie. Charity.
Yeah, black tie was very, very, it seemed either very fun or very fashionable.
But what's interesting, in those days, if you gave a dinner for maybe 20 in your home, it was black tie. And the men had black tie, the women were dressed beautifully, and Sophie always was known for having set the best table.
She was a wonderful hostess.
And wonderful food. Instead of reading, like many people, I love to read before I go to bed, she read cookbooks. There'd be a stack of cookbooks next to her bed. She would read a cookbook, mark each page, and then she'd have them tried out at home first, and no one had set a better table.
But she didn't cook them herself.
No, but...
Which I love, actually.
Yes, but she...
criticism.
Yes, but there was one thing I don't know where she got the recipe, but one Sunday, I often spent Sundays there, she said, somebody told me this new recipe. I said, recipe? Yes. And it was peanut butter, and it was, you toast the peanut, first you'd cut the crust off the bread, then you put that, and you shred all that, and then you heat the peanut butter and dip the toast into that, And then all the crumbs you would put around it. And she would serve that. When people came for dinner, for a drink or something, that was the one thing she was hands-on. She created it, and we did it. And but she had a house in New Jersey on weekends, and probably the most wonderful vegetable garden. And Adam used to kid her when we were having dinner, and he would say, "Oh, here is one of those $10 tomatoes today on the table," because, there was a gardener, and there was a lot of work. And the only thing she didn't grow was corn. I had a real thing about corn on the cob, and I would race Adam to see who could eat the most ears of corn. And there was a corn place down the road, so you could go and get it just when it was picked. But she thought, well, I'm going to surprise Helen. I would go to Europe for some fashion shows. And when I came back, she said, "Look what's here." And I got out of the car. There was corn growing. But the gardener had planted horse corn, so you couldn't eat it. But she was so much into everything. I mean, the food. No, as I said, no one's at a better table. I mean, she had recipes where she would do corned beef, and she would do it like a baked ham with the mustard and sugar, and it was unbelievable. Everybody wanted that recipe.
Who were some of the people she had at these dinner parties? I know a lot of her friends also were her clients. Can we talk about some of the bigger known, bold-faced names that were her clients and friends?
One of her best friends was Anita May, whose husband had the May stores in all of California. And they used to go out to Main Chance together. Another one of her great friends was Claudette Colbert, and she did all the clothes for Claudette's last movie, Parish. And then she was asked to design Mrs. Lyndon Johnson's coat and dress for the inauguration. And that was something.
This is a very funny story, actually, and it also shows how the attitude towards dressing a first lady has changed.
Yes, I mean, she went down to Washington, and with a fitter and a tailor and a fitter, and she worked on this red coat and dress. And I want to say that it was cold in those every time. It was January, and she was going to put a fur lining in the coat. And then what was so amusing was she said, "But you can't. You need to have pearls at your neck." I don't have pearls, so Sophie loaned her her pearls, and she wore those at the inauguration. And one of her other. She dressed Claudette Colbert, and Robin Duke, who was brought Mrs. Johnson to Sophie, was a large customer of hers. And then there were some ladies I don't remember, but one's husband, in those days, there was somebody called Mr. Big. I think he was affiliated with gangsters or something. But his wife, tiny little woman, was a very big customer. And they were, in those days, the fitting rooms had curtains. And so, the vendeuses, and there were 4 vendeuses who each had their certain set of customers. And there was also, in the models' room, there were 4 or 5 models, worked every day from 9 or 10 to 5. And every day at 2:30, they would do a fashion show in the salon. And there were 2 wonderful ladies called May and Elvira, who were the dressers. And they helped the models dress. They hung the clothes up. If the clothes needed to be press, they would go up to the 10th floor and be pressed again. And so there was an actual fashion show every day at 2:30, which was because the ladies would lunch and then they would come in afterwards.
It was a different time, wasn't it? Different era.
Totally a different time.
What other positions were at the Salon Moderne? There was a workroom there. All the garments were made on site, made in New York by...
Well, they were made on the custom-made clothes were made up on the 10th floor. And the ready-to-wear, ready-to-wear was made on 53rd Street, where we had a large building. And, you know, she was involved from the first when a garment was first made. It was a pattern that was done, and it was cut out of muslin. And they worked on the muslin garment before you wouldn't cut. The fabric was not cheap. So they would work on the garment and the pattern. And then that was when, if she okayed it, then they could cut the cloth.
How many fittings would a customer have for a made-to-measure, say a ball gown?
Well, probably, I would think she would, you know, come in for the first, where she would select everything that she wanted. Then it's not me.
It might be. That's okay.
No, I turned it off.
Here, we'll look at the women.
On the side, I turned this thing off.
Maybe it's Saks calling. They
No.
want you to come back. They need you.
I don't think so. I'm not about to go back to work. After 38 years, no, thank you. Anyway.
So how did she work? How did Sophie work? You have a customer, you have about 3 fittings.
Yes, and then, you know, she would fit in the morning on her models, and then in the afternoon, she'd also fit. And then the customer would come in and make her selection, and she probably has the first, you know, fitting, probably about 3 or 4.
Okay. Which is you know what is done also in Paris at the couture salons as well. It's a very similar method of working.
Exactly.
She had her seamstresses, her tailors.
Her tailors.
There was a very famous milliner, Tatiana.
Tatiana was her great friend and a wonderful human being. She was married to Alex Lieberman, who was the editorial director at Condé Nast and at Vogue. And I was very lucky. We were very good friends. And every day, we had lunch on a bridge table in her office. And it was, Sophie was here, I was here, and Betty Morgan, the head of the Salon Moderne, was there. But Tatiana had to sit here. And because the door was here, and she did not want to miss a customer. So she would be right here looking. And if she saw a customer coming, excuse me. But we always had lunch there, and Sophie often would bring a salad or from home, or we'd have sandwiches. And sometimes Saks had an employees' cafeteria, and we would go up there and have lunch, and it was wonderful. So we spent a lot of time together.
Sounds like the environment at the Salon Moderne was very family-like, and at
Very
Saks
family.
in general.
Yeah.
I put up a slide of the Time magazine cover that Sophie
She was
Gimbel
the
was
first
on.
American designer to appear on the cover of Time.
And the article inside talks about Sophie's commitment to American fashion after World War II. I think that if you can see, it says, "Who wants the new look?" which is referring to the new fashions that were coming out of Paris after 1947. I'm curious, did Sophie ever talk about the article? And also, was this what she was most proud of professionally, do you think?
I think professionally, I mean, to be the first American designer to be on a cover of Time magazine was quite a coup.
It is.
And I think there was a picture, maybe in that article, because when Christian Dior came to New York on a visit, that's where he had dinner at their home.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact. I think the article makes it out that there was a rivalry and that there maybe was a bit of bad blood, but they were actually
They were
friends.
friends.
They
Oh,
were
no bad
friends.
blood, no.
I think it was just that Sophie recognized that American fashion couldn't be kind of pushed away after the war years,
Right.
and her business was affecting her business, obviously, and she was an amazing businesswoman.
Yes, she was a very good businesswoman.
Who do you think today is the designer most like Sophie?
Well, for me, probably it would be Oscar de la Renta, because Oscar also was friendly with his customers, as was Sophie. I mean, Oscar, the clothes he designs could be part of that. And also, Jeffrey Bean is no longer alive, but Sophie did, after she no longer designed, she did wear Jeffrey Bean. And when at home, if she had dinners, I mean, Bill Blass would be at her table. And so she was very friendly with the design world and the New York social world.
How about, I've heard other people also mention that Carolina Herrera.
Carolina, yes.
Carolina,
Could,
sorry.
very much could be Carolina.
Okay. But definitely that old world, that very graciousness.
Gracious, things that flatter you.
Very aware of a woman's figure.
That's
Yeah,
very much
more very client driven. I think that's been said about Sophie as well, and very aware of what is feminine at the moment.
Right.
Sophie was definitely aware of that, and she was aware of playing up a woman's body with making her sexy while still making her appear like a lady. That was one of her specialties. We haven't touched upon Sophie and Adam's relationship that much. And
No, it was a love match. I mean, I can remember today, many years ago, when, I'd often go to the country with them and spend the weekend, because I loved to go to the racetrack, and Sophie loved the horses too. So very often I would, the night before, go and get the racing form, because she could figure the horses. We had this one friend at the racetrack who taught us how to figure the horses. And so she would be at the racetrack right there, and there was a wonderful man who would come in and take her bets and all. I'm not going to say there was one time, I'll never forget, it was a rainy, sloppy track. And we ended up winning. Each one of us won $150. I mean, I wouldn't tell you we'd probably lost, but that was quite an event. But but Adam very seldom came to the racetrack. He played golf, and as I said, it was a true love match. They held hands driving into town always.
And you said you're excited about winning $150. Can you give us an idea of how expensive Sophie's garments were?
Well, in today's world, it would not be, I never got into that part of the business, but I would think a made-to-order suit would be a couple $1,000s in those days. And when you look at, today's ready-to-wear, you could easily do that with something in ready-to-wear. But her Sophie originals were sold in all of our Saks stores, and we did fashion shows with those all out of town. And we did a fashion show every summer in Southampton. And the collection would be in the store for customers after that. And, it was quite a job getting all the models to Southampton. So I arranged that we also do it in East Hampton so that, you'd get more bang for your buck. But
Very smart.
we had a show out in both places, and everybody, would come and they'd order right on site.
Who were you mentioned models. Who were some of the models you used? I think that some of the names will surprise people.
Well, my favorite was Jean Patchett. she was on the cover of Vogue many times and had a little mold here. And but she didn't do many of the, when I photographed for the lookbook. That I did on a lot of her house models. And the girls of that time, Dovima and
Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina, we used before she started her business. And she was great to work with, just wonderful. And most of the models are really amazing. You can really, I still see today, usually every other Sunday, I go have Sunday lunch with my friend Iris Ori, who is a model in those days. And it's nice that, to see them just she's a fabulous cook. Oh, my.
There you go.
Italian.
What do you think, if Sophie were designing today, say, let's transport her, 30 years from her, she's still working, maybe she's mid-career right now, what would she be doing differently?
Well, I think she would keep up with the times, knowing her. I really do. And when I look at some of them, I have some clothes in storage, but I've looked at some of them. You could wear them today.
That's what a lot of people have said when they come into the exhibition, that her clothes are timeless.
They are
and
timeless.
The silhouettes are, and other comments are, you could wear that to the Oscars today. You could, somebody should wear her to the Oscars, that type of thing. As far as being a businesswoman, I think that Sophie was very smart and did a lot of innovative things during her time. She understood the power of PR. She started to explore the power of celebrity through the people she dressed. She actually appeared in a few advertisements herself. She became like a known entity. She endorsed watches and actually coffee and things like that. I see her as branching off beyond fashion. I think she was very on the cusp of maybe being like a kind of a Martha Stewart almost.
Right, she could have easily been
Yeah.
that. The thing that I love was she was the first person to make a culotte, and that was
Picture that.
in Navy, and she made it for herself to play golf in.
There's a picture.
And it was, I think there was a 3-page spread in Vogue magazine with the sketch. That's it.
It's up. Yep.
That was it. And I have that sketch.
Yeah, Helen owns this sketch. It's a Boucher.
But what I've done, I gave some, and nicely you copied them.
Yes, yeah, actually there's a companion
have
sketch to it, and it's in the exhibition. It's part of the Parsons archive.
So they copied it from me, and you wouldn't know the difference.
Now, Sophie was an avid golfer, and I think one of the most ironic things is by the end of her career, she was known, she's probably most remembered for this culotte suit,
Yeah,
taking this
right.
piece of sportswear and making it a little bit more acceptable off the golf course or off the playing field. Whereas for most of her career, she was really about formality and dressing appropriately. Right. So it kind of comes around in the end. This is mid-1960s here.
Right, and she was also in the country probably one of the first to wear trousers. Because her lifestyle, running in and jumping out of a car, going to the vegetable stand and things like that. And there was one vegetable stand that we went to, and suddenly she's getting out, and Adam had given her the most beautiful engagement ring. It went from here to here. And suddenly she's getting out of the car, and I'm saying, "Sophie, look at your ring." And she said, "Oh." So she turned it around. She always wore it just with you could see a platinum thing, but there was a beautiful diamond underneath. But you had to be careful, even in those days.
If you do get to see the exhibition, there is a portrait of Sophie from 1931, which is the year her and Adam married, and you can see the ring. It's painted in, and it is, even in the portrait, it's quite stunning.
She loved jewelry, I must say.
Yeah.
She really did. She adored jewelry. And David Webb she was one of his first clients. And actually, this is one of the pins.
Yeah, David Webb, who does the animal, the ceramic and gems.
She named it Jerry. And then she had a white horse, a very modern horse pin, and that she called Buck Passer. And she loved jewelry, no question.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you. I think we should open it up for questions.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Any questions? Don't.
We're going to pass.
And the blonde with all the pearls.
Oh, okay, wait. Okay, yeah, let's go here first, and then we'll go over to the side of the room, I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we could hear. Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Shouldn't be directing from up here. Okay.
For those of us who won't get to see the exhibition now, Beth, could you maybe describe what's actually there, how many pieces there are, and where they came from? Are they part of the Parsons collection?
They are. There are 16 garments in the exhibition. 15 are part of the Parsons archive, and they have come from various sources, former employees of Sophie's, also Sophie herself. She has a very strong connection with Parsons. Our design library is called the Adam and Sophie Gimbel Design Library. There is also one piece in the exhibition that her son and daughter-in-law sent up that Sophie actually wore into her retirement. So that's a lovely, timeless piece as well. There's actually a Tatiana hat from the Salon Moderne. There's some supporting the Time magazine article and other supporting paper art archival pieces. And then we have, in the exhibition, we have quotes from Sophie, because I was really taken by the fact that she was so good at sound bites very early on. She did a lot of radio, but she also gave a really good interview. So some of her sayings are up on the wall that have to do with a woman and her waistline should never be parted, was one of the things she said. And you should never, expose the bust and the legs at the same time. She had a lot of rules to live by as far as fashion goes. So that's the crux of it. The hallway has images, kind of highlights from her career, a little bit of a chronology to put everything into context. And then there was a student component to the exhibition as well, where students in the Couture Techniques class used Sophie's garments for inspiration. The Parsons Archive is a study collection, so it's very hands-on for in-classroom study as well as, occasional exhibition, hopefully more.
Beth,
Yes.
just maybe tell them about the online option.
Oh, yeah,
So
actually.
you can look online.
There is, this project actually started off as an online archive of her garments. So everything's been digitally photographed that we have in the collection of hers. You can get to the website through
560?
the 560 Parsons site. So that's basically, if you just type in Parsons 560, you'll get a few options will come up on our homepage, and one of them says Sophie of Saks. So just go right in there, and you can see her work there as well. Okay, sure. Question there?
Over there. Yep. Don't need to do anything. It should be on. You shouldn't need to do anything.
No.
It's not working.
Shout.
Oh, I'll just speak louder. This is just a question for Helen.
I'm hard of hearing, so.
Project.
It's quite a difficult question, but are there any of Sophie's garments that were your favourite, or that you could pick out as the one that was your particular favourite, and if so, why?
Well, I love the one she did for Claudette Colbert's last movie, Parish. There was a most beautiful white piqué with rickrack. And in the movie, there's a scene where it's up in Connecticut in Shades Tobacco. And actually, I think it was Sophie's grandfather, her great-grand, was in that area before he came down. Sophie was family from Atlanta, Georgia. But Elizabeth, was there someone, it's Elizabeth Rossbach, Sophie's granddaughter, wasn't there something up in Connecticut where somebody in the family, I can't remember why Sophie just was so intrigued by this movie. No. Anyway, she did all the costumes for this, and there was a wonderful, I ended up going up and photographing that collection, and there was a half page years ago at the Herald Tribune. There was a wonderful writer and editor named Eugenia Shepard, and I loved to work with her because I would put together stories. Actually, there was a story I did with all of Claudette wearing all of Sophie's clothes in this one movie, and when the editor at the time, New York Times, saw it, she called me down and said, well, why can't you do that for us? I said, well, you've never asked me to do it. And I said, happily work on stories for you, but I love to put together a story, and, you know, Eugenia would give me a whole half a page. So, and I did a lot of that, because I also was a photographer. And
Actually, this is one of your photographs, I think. This is one of the lookbook shots up here that Helen was referring
that's
to.
Jean Patchett.
Okay, and there you go. That's Jean Patchett, and that is one of the garments in the exhibition as well. But yeah, you wrote the text and you.
Oh, I
took
didn't.
pictures
I've
from
had
the-
somebody else write the text.
Okay.
I can't. All I can do is write my
Well, I'm
name.
sorry. I thought you did.
No, I'm not good at writing.
Any other questions? Yes.
This gentleman.
Yeah, you were telling the story about doing the twist.
Yes.
And I just wondered how she adapted, or what perhaps she thought about sort of changing fashions in the 1960s, and whether it influenced her in any way, or she had a view on it.
You know, I mean, what was wonderful was there was a club that you could go to where they did the twist and all of that. And I went one night, and I think we snuck Sophie in there. She wanted to see everything that was happening. She was very curious. And, you know, it's wonderful. There was nothing that ever went past her that, you know, she didn't want to know all about.
This is one of Sophie's last designs, either from her last collection or the collection before that. And it is very contemporary. It's 1968, I believe, and it's very Sophie, but it's also a little bit caftan, a little bit psychedelic colors. So I think she was open to a lot of influences.
Mm-hmm. And she did caftans very early on.
So she tried to stay current.
Oh, yeah. She herself was always very current.
Anyone else?
Yes.
How old was Sophie when she passed away? How long did she live?
She died when she was 81. And she retired, I would say probably it was probably 75 or 70. But she did work, you know.
Yeah, she worked until a good age.
She
Yeah.
did, you know. She got up every morning and had breakfast in bed with her little dog next to her. And she was at the store, the shop, by 11 o'clock. And then had lunch in her office, and then went home about 4:30.
Okay. Well, I'm going to draw a line under that now. This has been fantastic. So can we have a round of applause, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd love to see you all again.
That really was wonderful. Thank you. Now, I gather Ian is going to say a few words just to kind of wind us up in line for the next one. Where is he? Here he comes. So, Ian, I'm going to hold you to 5 minutes because I know that people are much more interested in having a drink of wine at this point.
Absolutely.
And they're going to need fortifying because the snow is coming down pretty heavily outside. So I'm sure you haven't seen it, but it's a lot of fun to be had just trying to walk down the street.
Okay.
So crack on.
5 minutes.
And I'll have you after 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll be watching you. I did have an hour on the program, so I've got 5 minutes now. So I'm going to compress everything into 5 minutes, so it's going to be quite a job. So let me just say that the Colloquia series, the first series, is now finished. I'd like to thank various representatives from each of the 4 locations which are here. London, there's various people from London College of Fashion, Barbara from Domus. We have David here from IFM, there he is, and all the people here at Parsons who've done a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances. So thank you very much for doing what you've done today. Thank you. Now, the question that we asked in Paris was whether we should actually finish the series. And the general view was felt that there was enough interest that we should continue it. So we're going to continue with another series of colloquia, which will start in September in London. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But after that, we're then moving on to a different theme. The first 4 were much more on established fashion weeks. So these 4 that we've talked about, the big kind of fashion weeks. So the next one, we're looking at a different theme. And we wanted to see if they were the similar issues that were facing the emerging fashion cities around the world, or that they would be similar or different. So we're going to start moving around the world slightly broader. So we're going to start off in Amsterdam with Soraya, who's here from Amphi in Amsterdam in January. And then we're going to go to Shanghai, and we're going to Shanghai to go there because they're going to open a new research center in Shanghai in the late 2014, 2015, and we're going to be part of their fashion week there in Shanghai, so that's going to be good. And then after that, we're going to go to Istanbul. There's some really exciting things which are happening in Turkey at the present time, and it's going to happen in the next couple of years particularly. And then after that, we go to Sao Paulo in Brazil. So, and all being well, we're hoping then to go to Mumbai in India the period after that. So we're trying to go around the world to look at all the emerging kind of contrasts which are taking place. And if other places are interested, then please contact me and we'll look at some other things taking place after that. What I also should say is you will also see that when we have these events, what we try and also do is put all this content on the web so that you can access it. And up until now, something like 100,000 hits have been on the content from the first 4. So there's a lot of interest around the world about what you are doing. So what you are doing is creating interest, and people are interested in what you're doing. So I don't need the 5 minutes. I think I will leave on that point. So thank you very much, and keep on with the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Yes.
Some of the sessions that were scheduled for tomorrow, like the Patchett sessions, will not be held anymore.
So,
will they be uploaded or anything so that we can still...
Yes. We're going to do our best to upload as much as we've managed to record. For those people that would be doing Couture's, I'm confident that we can run those sometime next week and then upload them. So at least you'll get, everyone that was scheduled to deliver content throughout the period of this colloquium, we will make sure that that content finds its way onto the site one way or the other. We may have to do a Couture with a fake audience, but you'll understand if we do that. I want to thank a few people. Fiona, fantastic job being our point person on this. Well done. Our executive dean over here, Joel Towers, we're supposed to be closed. We're supposed to have been kicked out of this building 3 hours ago. So, Joel, thank you for allowing us to be here. We're nothing without our support staff. So, Josie, Andy, Denise, and who's the other one I'm forgetting? Hold on. Oh, David. There you go, David. Sorry. And our student workers, brilliant job, everyone. Thank you, and thanks to everyone that came from far away. Again, we're a very proud and strong school here, but we would be nothing without our friends that come to visit us. So thank you all for coming. Ian. Huh? Yeah, right. You're never going to leave. You know that, don't you? You saw it earlier. You never leave Parsons. You're never going to. I'm fascinated to hear about these new cities. We've got lots of friends in those places, so I look forward to finding ways for us all to work together and seeing all of you at the next one, and indeed for the next hour as we tuck into the wine that we hastily brought from across the street in order to keep everyone warm in their lengthy walk home. Yes?
Can I just say one more thing?
Please.
In September, we're going to run a research workshop in London. I did mention I would talk about this, so maybe I needed that 2 minutes that I gave back. And we are going to run this research workshop, which is about collaboration. We think that there's a lot of opportunity to develop more research across fashion across the world. So what we're going to try and do is, rather than look for different forms of funding, we're going to look at our own resources and look at how we can share and collaborate and cooperate with a series of international research projects. So in London, we're going to launch that. We're going to call for, in the next few weeks, call for ideas and proposals for research projects. And then we're going to, in London, kind of matchmake, if you can know what I mean. And we think that will be fun, but we also think it will be very productive, because we're then going to put people together in teams and then allow these research projects to actually mature and develop. And then we're going to revisit them and look at the progress over each of these cities over the next 2 or 3 years. So it will be an interesting experience. Thank you.
Marvellous. So that's it. That's our show. Have a drink, have a chat, and I look forward to seeing you all in London. Thank you.